Welcome to the Thriving Farmer Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kilpatrick. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and celebrate sustainable farming. We believe that you can build a profitable, sustainable farm that gives you true farm freedom. Join us as we talk to farmers, innovators, educators, and entrepreneurs to glean their top takeaways in business and life. Hey, Thriving Farmers, Michael Kilpatrick here with a special edition of the Thriving Farmer Podcast. So I know we've been keeping you up to date pretty much every couple days with the whole COVID-19 thing for your farms. And then now, since the government has passed the largest stimulus package in the history of our country called the CARES Act, we went ahead and put together I think it's a 16-page PDF guide that you can access at www.growingfarmers.com/relief. But we also wanted to bring on a farm business expert to talk through that in just a verbal format for you. So we went and got Mark Cannella. And is that correct how I pronounce your name, Mark?
Mark Cannella.
Cannella. Okay. So we went and got Mark Cannella, who is an associate professor and farm business management specialist with the University of Vermont Extension. He currently directs UVM Extension agriculture business programs with a focus on the management and delivery of farm and forest business planning programs, financial analyst, and applied business research to a broad audience. Mark works directly on maple economics projects, since that's such a big deal in Vermont, throughout the northeastern United States as well. Welcome, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Mark, tell us a little bit about what keeps you busy these days.
Yeah, sure. Well, you gave a nice introduction. Myself and my staff, we do farm business programming across the state of Vermont. And as you mentioned, I do a lot of work with maple. So that brings me across the Northeast or northern states. We work directly with farm owners. A lot of our programming is one-on-one business planning, business plan coaching, business plan preparation, often financial statement preparation. That's our general routine, along with seminars and conferences on farm business management. I'd say in the past two weeks, as everyone listening probably knows, all general routines are often out the window. So right now, we've really been trying to stay tuned to farmer need. We're fielding a lot of inquiries from business owners across the food system, and trying to keep a pulse on the changing environment that they're trying to navigate, and problem solve some of the situations, as I'd say, as a lot of business owners are facing disruption at different levels in their normal business.
So talk to us about the current times we're in. It's a lot of upheaval. What are some basic principles that farms can use to make sure that they're staying strong?
Yeah, I think a lot of farms are dealing with different things, from HR and employee management to employee safety. That comes up quite a bit. There are some farms, I will say before we talk about the challenges, there are some farms that are really feeling like they're booming or busting out of the seams. Certain market channels are expanding dramatically with food sales increasing. So there are a group of people where supporting growth is something for them. And then, as I think we'll talk about a little bit with some of the emergency financial programs developing, there are a lot of farms right now that are dealing with disruption to their markets, or disruption to other things that are forcing them to really reconsider, their operations this week or their operations this summer. And that's taking us in a couple of different directions depending on the business owner and the type of business.
Yeah, let's say farmers markets. Like I know Green Market put out a guide that's talking about, how to keep people safe from the produce, and, keeping people 6 feet apart. And they're like letting people in with counters to the market to make sure they can keep that low density. I know some CSAs, which are sold out. They've already sold out for the year. And so they're trying to figure out how can they increase production. People selling to restaurants are having to completely retool. So it's there's a wide number of things going on. And I think the biggest thing, Mark, was just like run the numbers on stuff, talk to someone who knows about some of these other market channels and see if they might be for you.
Yeah, exactly. And the two things that we've heard in the past 2 weeks is there's a number of farm owners, like you said, like in Vermont, at this point, the farmers markets, or a certain number of farmers markets, have been closed. So there's a number of farmers that are trying to find a way to pivot operationally right away, to satisfy their existing customers, And so that may be changing to a home delivery format or some sort of
Mhm.
Dropbox or pickup format. So there's people that are doing that and making the changes. And then you mentioned the numbers. I think there are a number of business owners that are realizing um, whether or not they pivot and make a operational change, they may just need some cash flow and they need
Mhm.
liquidity to stay in operation and to manage payroll over the next several weeks. Some of them may look at changes to how they operate, but a lot of them are just looking at the financial instruments so that they
Mhm.
can, keep gas in the tank, as we say, keep the dollars moving through their accounts and keep up with activity.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So Robert Arnold at Pleasant Valley Farm, he was just on the podcast literally 4 days ago, and he was talking me through basically what they're running is they're running these models with dollars of products sold versus dollar of delivery. So they ran their numbers on their farmers markets, they ran their numbers on pickups at farmers markets, they ran the numbers on home delivery. And it was very interesting that they are now up to around $8 of product delivered for $1 of, let's say, I guess what you'd call as the production delivery production or something like that. Um,
Okay.
which is very interesting to be able to see that it was very similar between home delivery and the farmers market sales.
Oh, how
So
about
they,
that? Okay.
yeah, I mean, it was like $7.18 for one and like $8.04 for the other.
Yeah, well, and that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of folks I've certainly done enterprise analysis with people that have looked at doing direct retail through a market or even through a store. And
Mm-hmm.
you realize the overhead burden of having an employee service that
Mm-hmm.
channel for whatever, since 5 in the morning for pack up and set up through the market day and then through the cleanup. And you,
Mm-hmm.
you need to generate a certain amount of sales at a retail location. For those that are switching to maybe a delivery or a Dropbox model, this gets down to really logistics
Mm-hmm.
and routes and maximizing your potential sales revenue on a particular route. If it's not well planned, you may find yourself spending more time servicing this new delivery mode. But I
Mm-hmm.
think in the case you explained, that if you have the demand and you can manage it correctly, you could possibly really optimize that owner or staff labor that it's going to take to serve that channel,
Mm-hmm.
which is
And it
encouraging.
all comes,
That's
yeah, it's
that's
very encouraging.
that's encouraging. Yes.
I mean, the one thing with Vermont is that Vermont is a very rural state. So that's a problem with getting enough people in a geographic area to make that delivery work for you. But run your numbers. I mean, Robert was saying they were making money with no charge to home delivery. And he said, obviously, if we add that on top, it's going to really make it very profitable for them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The density of your customers, the population, will definitely impact those distribution routes. And one thing that we've been looking at, and we're doing a little ad hoc consultation with farms, as people are pivoting to online platforms,
Mm-hmm.
um, digital marketing at large, and then online transactions with an ordering process. We're realizing that that's a numbers thing that people have to figure out. There's a certain cost to overseeing the customer communication, to managing
Mm-hmm.
the online platforms, and the owners really do need to price that into whatever new product they're offering. It's not just the food in the basket, it's very much the service that's built into that whole product. And doing
Yeah.
that costing, like you mentioned, is really essential so that you don't rush into an operational pivot and realize you're not getting the margin that you need.
Absolutely. So let's pivot a little bit in this conversation and let's start talking about the government CARES Act and just the general government response to this to help people financially. Because there's like four different main things they've kind of done. Some are, focused on small businesses. Some are just focused more on the general population. Let's work through that.
Yeah, sure. In the past week, I've spent a lot of time on calls and trying to navigate. Primarily, the two parts of that would be the things that, let me reframe that. The parts of it that I've really been focusing on are the two emergency loan programs that are being
Hmm.
backed by U.S. Small Business Administration, the SBA, and that's the Paycheck Protection Program, being referred to
Hmm.
as PPP. And then there's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, which is separate with some different eligibility criteria. So
Hmm.
those are two emergency loan programs that they're just developing, and we're talking, Michael, on a day-to-day basis here. New policy,
Yes.
new policy, new guidance, correction to the guidance from the day before. Um, that's where we're at. That's where the farm owners are at. And that's where the lenders are at as well, trying to navigate these programs.
Hmm. And we're recording this April 6th. And so, if you're listening a couple days afterwards, even a week after, there may be some changes. So again, I think anything that we say that you will want to qualify through your local loan provider, um, because yeah, stuff is constantly changing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got some news over this past weekend. I think there is news in the national news about some of the larger banks like the Wells Fargo's that have stopped accepting applications for PPP. They've stopped because they've hit certain capital criteria within their bank. This morning, this is Monday, April 6th, I called two local lenders that I know that are going to be offering the PPP program. They're still actively receiving applications. So the local
Hmm.
bank dynamic, it could be and probably will be distinctly different than some of the national news that's picked up on the
Hmm.
major banking firms.
Yeah. And is it just because they don't have any more capacity? They've already spent too much money through this,
Um,
those Wells Fargo type, or they
yeah,
don't want to manage too many of these loans?
I don't know if it's that they don't want to or they can't, but each lending organization is subject to certain liquidity and capital criteria to protect them
Ah, yeah.
from putting too much money out, or promising too much money. Per
Hmm.
chance it doesn't work out. And so I think, as I understand it, certain large banks have actually hit their cap. Um,
Gotcha. Yeah.
yeah.
All right, so let's dive in. What's the first one? Should we work through the EIDL one first?
I think it might be worth mentioning that there are two programs. There's the Paycheck Protection Program and then the Emergency Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And
Hmm.
the important quick filter is that the PPP program will be eligible to farm businesses.
Hmm.
The Economic Injury Grant or loan or grant is not necessarily going to be eligible for all farm operations.
Yeah.
So a lot of the farms are moving to PPP as their first focus.
Yeah, and I know there's a couple types that are separate. Like I know if you have a retail nursery business, or if I think it's something with aquaculture, the EIDL, you can still apply for that. So you definitely want to classify. But for most of the farms, you're absolutely correct that yeah, and that's frustrating. And I know there was some behind the scenes work to see if they could change that, but I haven't heard anything. And it probably won't get changed.
Yeah, correct. And you said it right. The EIDL program is not going to be an option for 100% farms, but they do have some exemptions in there for agricultural cooperatives, aquaculture enterprises, nursery enterprises, and producer cooperatives. Also,
Hmm.
maple operations, we just found out this morning, will be
Oh.
eligible for EIDL. Um, so you're correct in that. The one thing we are waiting on is the USDA has a lump of money coming through the US relief package. And so we
Yes.
are waiting eagerly to hear if USDA via Farm Service Agency or via other mechanisms will
Yeah.
be providing relief.
So that is how many billion was that? That was like 9 point.
The number I'm recalling is something like 9 or 9.5 billion.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we don't know what's going to happen there. It's still up in the works. Now I know that one of the other things is that Farm Credit is actually able to do these PPP loans from what I'm hearing from some of my friends in Michigan, that they're actually able to apply right through Farm Credit for these.
Yeah, that's correct. Farm Credit is working with these loans. We have some local agricultural economic lenders in Vermont. I think the key for producers is that these are federally backed, federally supported programs, but the lending will actually occur through your local bank and your local lender. There's a
Hmm.
number of SBA approved lenders in each state or each region. So we recommend that folks get a little information from a program like this, but then they directly reach out to their current bank and work with the people in those institutions to figure out exactly how to apply, if there's any specific criteria or paperwork that needs
Hmm.
to be submitted. The local commercial lender will be the one that will work the business owner through that process.
Yeah. Yeah. And how the process worked for us, because we already ran through it for our business, was it was literally a 15-minute application process that we had to make sure we had our numbers for payroll and all of that for them. And then what's going to happen is they will follow up with us to actually get proof of those numbers. We'll actually have to mail them a bunch of documents and stuff. So it's not like it's not a ton of work, at least from our bank. and just make sure. Yeah, so I just say again, make sure you get your application in, because I think some banks or other banks will probably run out.
Yeah, there's definitely a concern that the initial pot of federal funds will get exhausted quickly. So people are recommended to get their submissions in soon. And Michael, you mentioned the application process. We've got a fact sheet on our UVM Extension Ag Business website that works through some of the information you'll need to prepare.
Hmm.
Basically, it's looking at the prior year's accounting records and providing your payroll and or related costs, i.e. tax and benefits
Hmm.
connected to payroll. There's a formula there, but farm owners can put together a loan application for 2.5 months worth of payroll and related costs as allowed by this program, and that would be your submission.
Yeah. So how that works then is you take, and you can take the principal owner or the owner of the business as well, and that can go, that can be a part of this loan application as well.
Our understanding right now is that documented payroll, as it's laid out in your previous year accounting, would account for wage or salaried employees. In the case of an LLC or an LLP, the actual owners would have to be paid on salary, which some of them are with those entity setups.
Okay.
For sole proprietors, it appears that the owners would only be eligible for a part of this benefit based on their net income. So a Schedule F would provide your net income. So the
Hmm.
2019 Schedule F would provide your net income, which would then be it would be the amount by which your self-employment tax would be levied against. And
Okay. Yep.
it's that net income that would be the amount that the sole proprietor owner could submit through the loan. And you could see the rub there. We know a lot of small business owners, and they work actively on tax
Yeah.
management strategies. And
Hmm.
so the challenge is that if anyone has not been posting or had not posted a net income for 2019,
Yeah.
they very well may not have any amount as a sole proprietor owner that they could submit on for their own benefit
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah, yeah, that is going to hurt a lot of farmers, because the farmers especially like to zero out in December. I know we always did that. We tried our hardest to zero down as close as we could in December, and then obviously a bunch of CSA money would come in January. Um,
Correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
to fund that year.
This could
Yeah,
be the sobering moment for a lot of folks that have done that tax
yeah,
planning the previous year. It could impact the sole proprietor's ability
yeah.
to benefit.
So let's talk through what are the things that are included that you can, because I know you can include obviously the wages you've paid to people. You can cover healthcare premiums. I understand. You can cover like paid sick leave and some of those other things. What? How is that everything? What else can be included?
Um, well, I'm going to do my best, but I will say speak to the lender and read the
Yeah.
specifics as we're getting documentation. My understanding is that you take that prorated 2 month payroll and it turns into 2 months additional a half month. So you get 2.5 months, or you get this 25%
Hmm.
I'm sorry, not 25%. My understanding is you take your payroll from the previous year on an annualized basis, turn it into a monthly, and then you get 2 months worth. And then you can actually turn that into 2.5 months worth. And that extra zero point 0.5, assuming you maintain your payroll as the program's designed, that extra that extra zero point 0.5 amount would allow you to cover certain expenses like mortgage interest, um,
Mm.
rental, um, lease agreements, it looks like, will be covered to a certain extent. Utilities will be covered to a certain extent.
Hmm.
So those are the big ones I'm seeing: interest on mortgage, rent under lease, and utilities. And then we really encourage that any borrowers under this program read the fine print and understand it with their lender. All eligible expenses will be forgiven. It's a 100% forgivable loan if the criteria is followed. And any
Hmm.
money that gets used outside the criteria will then get packaged into a fixed loan that the business owner is liable for repayment.
Yeah. And I think to get to get the forgiveness, you have to wait for 6 months, and then you basically fill out a separate application. Is that what I understand?
You may know more the specifics than I do. I do think there's a time period delay and there'll be a verification process.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be pretty clear that the lenders, and this is important, the money, the forgiveness part is flowing from the federal government. But my understanding is any loans that get retained because of expenses that are outside the criteria, the risk is borne by the local lender, your
Mm.
community financer. So they are going to do a check on your payroll to ensure that you've actually maintained the employees that the program was designed
Hmm.
to maintain. And they'll go through some of those additional expenses to make sure they fall in the category to then determine how much is forgivable and how much will be packaged into a loan.
Hmm. And I think for the packaging, latest I heard was 1% interest and then a 2-year period that is going for, correct?
Yeah, that's the latest I've heard. So this is as of April 6th. We've gotten the 1% fixed rate for 2 years. Previously, as of like 3 days ago, there was still documentation about a
Hmm.
0.5% fixed rate. And there's also some other paperwork that may say up to 10 years. But that's changed. So in the past few days, we've heard a change from 1% 2 years. I wouldn't be surprised if that changes again. I have talked to local lenders. Um, they are great as a local lender, and they feel like that 1% still won't cover their servicing of this program. So
Mm.
let's be watchful if that 1%
Yeah.
rate changes.
And that's even though the government is basically, paying them to manage this. So yeah, it comes down to, yeah, banks, I guess. And so yeah, so I think that's the basic overage of the program, right? I mean, is there any other details that people should be aware of?
No, I mean, well, I do think there's a couple. So we've established that PPP is a program that farms are eligible for, even if some people last week were hearing otherwise from
Hmm.
local banks. There is one other note on PPP. Right now, the cap on PPP is going to only be based on the employee number cap. So that's 500 or less employees, which I think
Okay.
a lot of the farms we work with
Yes.
will be fine with that. There is some language in the SBA guidelines that says farm operations have to be under $1 million in gross sales. And we just heard feedback from our congressional offices last week that criteria of a prior SBA criteria will be waived on this. So
Mm.
farms that have a gross sales exceeding $1 million a year can still be eligible for PPP as long as they have under 500 employees.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's how that's being calculated.
Yep.
Okay, that's good. I think there's two other things that obviously people need to be aware of to be outside of these programs is there's the economic impact payment, which I think it's to every single eligible taxpayer and child is going to be happening, and people don't have to do anything about that as long as you've paid your taxes for 2019 or like are a taxpayer that you will get that payment. um, and then I think there's additional loans that can be available as well, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Well, and are you speaking of the economic injury disaster loan, or are you thinking
No,
other?
if you look at that, so the U.S. Senate Subcommittee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, there is at the bottom, there's another, there's a small business tax provision, and I think there was some counseling and training that you can also get through them. So I think there's two other things. Um, I think those are the other two
Yes.
programs. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. Yeah, yeah. So right now, the information coming from the Small Business Association is that they have counseling and training programs, and the Small Business Administration does have a number of other loan products that are actively
Hmm.
available to business owners. So I would encourage folks to look at those and see if those rates and terms are favorable, and also to see if your eligibility um, is still appropriate for those existing programs. That would be the relationship we're waiting for with new information from the USDA Farm Service Agency,
Hmm.
because we do expect there to potentially be some additional loan or financial products that will come through FSA. FSA is traditionally the lender that's designed for the agricultural community, and we're expecting that there might be something through them as well.
Okay. Yeah. So there's additional stuff. So stay tuned. We'll try to, keep it you updated in the podcast. Either it be a special episode like this, or maybe we'll just tack it on to another episode. Because we know not every one of you is opening or reading our emails, but we highly encourage you do, because we send out this kind of information every couple of days, especially in this, just very rapidly changing time. Now, where can they find out more information, Mark?
We're posting the newest updates and the newest information we get on our website, University of Vermont Extension Farm Viability and Agricultural Business Programs. I can give you our address here. It's blog.uvm.edu/farmvia. I could also read that out if you want me to read that out.
That's good. That's good right there. And we'll put that in the show notes too. So we'll put all the links in the show notes. So if you guys can't find this, you just want to go to thrivingfarmerpodcast.com, and the latest episodes are always at the bottom of the homepage. So just make sure you grab that. And then we've got our ebook for this too, which actually the beauty of our ebook is it actually walks you through 3 different scenarios. So we went through a small farm, a medium farm, and then a farm that actually has a non-farm business component as well, and show you kind of what the numbers look like and how you'd calculate things. So I highly recommend you get that at www.growingfarmers.com/relief. And then if you're looking for just COVID-19 resources, whether it be from the University of Vermont has some great cleaning and like sanitation protocols, to what all the how different farms are pivoting with online software, and some free courses and stuff that are out there available, that is all available at growingfarmers.com/tips. So, and that's just TIPS. So, Mark, thanks so much for coming on. Anything else before you head off that you want to share?
I do want to add one thing. We didn't talk at length about the economic injury disaster loan, but it's important for folks to know if you're eligible. The first $10,000 of that loan is being considered a grant. So that is a first $10,000 grant to go towards supporting your business.
Yes. And the kinds of things we're seeing, obviously, that you might be involved in, let's say you had like like things like campgrounds, things like if you had a food processing business, if you had, as you said, like a nursery or an aquaculture, there's a number of things that might be applicable. So do make sure you reach out to your loan lender and just talk through that with them, because I'd hate for you guys to have that be available and then just not be able to make it happen. All right. Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Best to you and best to all the farmers out there that are adapting on a daily basis.
So there you have it, another episode in the books. So I'd love if you would hop on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and a review. Those mean everything to us. We love to hear what you're thinking. If you have a podcast guest that you can recommend, please pop on over to the Thriving Farmer Podcast website and leave us a review. That's thrivingfarmerpodcast.com.